Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday, Carleen. How are you?
I am well. And yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. It's the afternoon. I'm ready for the day to be almost over, but I wanted to go live with you to talk about bookkeeping and loving your numbers. So tell everyone who you are first and how to find you, what you do before we even get started.
Sure. So I'm Carleen Lamay, and I own C2 Accounting, and we are basically an accounting firm that really focuses on bookkeeping. So our job is to make sure our small business owners are have peace of mind, right? That they can focus on doing what they love to do, and we take care of the rest.
And I was telling Colleen before we went live that I have a past client of mine who said, I need a new accountant. And I was like, do you need a new accountant or do you need a new, like a bookkeeper? She's like,
Hmm.
well, what's the difference? And I explained the difference, which we did on another live.
Hmm.
But when in the end, she was like, I need someone to ask questions too when I'm running, putting my numbers through my bank account and my QuickBooks and this. And I'm like, well, then you need a really rock star bookkeeper, which is what Colleen is. So I'm hoping she's going to try to watch or watch on replay because a lot of people need you and they don't even realize that they need you. So let's talk about loving your numbers and understanding financial statements.
Yeah. So what I know one source of frustration for a lot of business owners, whether interior designers or in another industry, is that they know that they should be looking at their numbers, but they're like, what exactly does that mean? Right. So today I kind of thought we should talk about like financial statements, like the big three, and then kind of go over like what they should be looking at, and then maybe how they can use some of that information to make some financial decisions.
Okay, so everybody don't disappear, even though it's scary stuff. And we're going to be talking
No,
about
we try
numbers,
to
but
make it interesting.
I was
You
going
and
to
I
say,
do a good job at that.
exactly. Colleen makes it easy for you to understand your numbers, as easy as possible. So, all right, tell us what we should be looking for in the big three reports.
So the big three are going to be your income statement, also known as a profit and loss, a balance sheet, and then cash flow statements. People, most business owners, when they're looking at their reports, the first thing they're looking at is that profit and loss statement. How much money am I making, right? So they are if you look at a profit and loss statement, it's really all it is just your income broken down however that makes sense for you and your brain, and then your expenses. And then there are some categories that are standard, but I've seen people kind of customize it a little bit again because it makes more sense to them. And so we can always do that. You want to focus on you know, one of the things I like to have people do is maybe break down the revenue so they can see where the money's coming from. How much is it in interior design fees versus how much is it in furniture sales? For me, how much is it is going to be in monthly bookkeeping versus quarterly bookkeeping versus training? So, kind of breaking it down so you can see maybe where to focus your energy when you are looking for new clients and you're thinking about marketing, focusing those areas that are already making you a lot of money.
Yes, and for designers, design fee, project management fee,
Hmm.
furnishings, consults, whatever they're charging for, they can look at their profit and loss or income statement is their profit and loss statement and find
Hmm.
out if they can break it down to that level of detail. It's very helpful.
Exactly. Well, I know that a quick tidbit would be nearly 60% of small businesses can actually improve their profitability by actually paying attention to that P&L, to that income statement, because it's going to tell you where you're spending your money. And what one of the fastest ways to profitability is to reduce your expenses. If you don't know what your expenses are, how are you going to cut them?
Exactly. Well, because we like to bury our head in the sand, so we don't have to cut anything. So, all right. So
Easier
that,
said than
yeah,
done.
that's
Right.
exactly.
So we just talked about income statement. The other big report is going to be your balance sheet. And this is one I tell you when I get on a call with new clients and I'll say something like balance sheet. And then you start seeing the deer in headlights. And I go, okay, wait a second. When I say that, do you know what I mean? And they're like, um, maybe. So let's go over what it means, right?
Okay.
Basically, a balance sheet is just a snapshot of how your business is doing at a particular point in time. It looks at your assets, which is things that you own, like your bank accounts, any kind of deposits you have, like with your landlord, things that are value, real estate, cars, as a business. And then it looks at your liabilities, which are things that you owe. So for this audience today, sales taxes is a liability because you collect it, but it's not your money. It's got to go back out the door.
Mhm.
Credit cards, loans, things like that. Those are all your liabilities. And the difference between the two is your equity. And equity usually includes things like your owner's draws. So when you're looking at the balance sheet, that's where that will sit. People will go, well, I took out money from my business, but I don't see it on my P&L. Well, yeah,
Mm,
that's because it's your owner's draw. It's an equity account. It sits on the balance sheet. So just kind of understanding where things sit kind of
okay.
reduces some of that confusion.
Okay.
So when when people are buying things, it gets a little confusing. It's like, well, where should it go and how should it be? Again, having a bookkeeper is going to help reduce and demystify some of that kind of
I was
stuff.
going to say, yeah, because interior designers particularly have so many transactions going in and out of their accounts. It's like, well,
Hmm.
what's going to end up on the balance sheet and what's going to be on the P&L and what does it really mean to me? So I
Yeah,
like the way you described it. The balance sheet is showing you where your business is today, assets versus liabilities.
exactly. It's literally a snapshot. Whatever the date is on that balance sheet, that's the date. So the next day, the numbers are changing because it's constantly moving. So the other
Okay.
thing I want to point out about a balance sheet, because I mentioned that your owner's equity will be on there. The balance sheet is an ongoing thing. So if you look at your profit and loss statement, the income statement we talked about a few minutes ago, it's going to be for that time period, like that year. Whereas the balance sheet is all encompassing. So if you look at your owner's draw, it may say, your owner's draw is $200,000. You're like, "Ah, I didn't take out $200,000 this year." No, you didn't. It's cumulative. It's ever since you've had
Ah,
these books. So that's one thing
okay.
that
That's a good thing
trips
to
up.
know. I didn't know that either.
Yep, it trips up a
Okay.
lot of people.
Okay.
Um, and so the last of the big three is a cash flow statement. And I'm going to be really honest. A lot of us, including myself, really don't look at the cash flow
Yeah, I
statement
was
a
going to say, I
lot.
don't think I've looked at that more than
Yeah,
once. And I thought, I don't know if this is right. And I bounced off of it.
yeah. What it does, it basically it's a snapshot of your cash at a given time. So basically, it says, okay, as of today, you have $50,000 in cash, and it tells you where it came from. Like, in the past month, you brought in this much in receivables, you paid out this in credit card payments and loan payments. So is it super helpful? I don't know. I mean, if you're doing high-fluting finances, maybe, but for us small business owners, when we're just looking at day to day, it's not as helpful because it's
Yeah.
it's kind of in the past. But I at least wanted to touch on it because I think it is important that people understand that it is there in case they
Right.
feel
And it's
concerned.
depending on the type of business they run, it could show them projections going forward, what
Right. You
based
can
on historical data, right?
right. You can use it to do some projections going forward. But yeah, but it is going to be always when you're looking at that report, it's going to be in the past. So
Okay. All
and
right.
then, so we have the big 3. We have income statements, balance sheets, cash flow. So okay, you know what it is now. What difference does it make, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna use those financial statements for decision making. We talked about the fastest way to increasing profitability is reducing your expenses. But what about things like pricing strategies? Or talking about maybe making a budget, using that information that past data can help you make some of those future decisions, like
Yeah. I
how
mean,
much
how
should I
much you're
be
spending
budgeting?
on marketing, sales,
Mhm.
systems, staffing, right?
It helps you to kinda analyze, so, like, you can say, "Well, okay, this year I'm going to increase my marketing by 10%." So you can look back and say, "Well, did my" after I've had this marketing increase in place for 3 months, am I seeing hopefully a correlation of a 10% increase in sales? And if not, it helps you to kinda figure out where you should be spending your money, so maybe that's not the right place. Maybe you need to tweak it and try to do something else.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so, at the end of the day, it's basically it helps you to make those decisions to pivot your business. And I know in a previous video we talked about like why it's important to have a CPA who's doing financial planning and not just preparing your taxes. They're also using that information to help you make pivots. So that way, if you're making more money than you expected this year, that you're paying those appropriate estimated taxes, so you're not hit with fees. Or if you're making
Yes.
less than you thought, then maybe you can cut back on what you're paying in estimated taxes and keep more cash in the business to fund other things that you need, like more marketing.
Yeah, and it depends on how big your business is and how complicated this gets, right? If you're
Hmm.
carrying a vehicle on your business or you have a lease on a car or on a building, if you happen to have a showroom, there's so many different nuances to this. But if you use your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statement to really dive in and look at your numbers and understand it, it's going to help you make decisions on how you should proceed with your business like a CEO, not just like,
Like a
I'm going to
CEO.
try, I feel
Mhm.
like I want to do this and I want to spend that. It's really
Yes.
not about emotion, it's about the numbers.
Yes, take the motion out of it as much as possible. You mentioned, about oh, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I
Carrying an
hate
asset on the business.
no, I know what it was. You were mentioning how, this person may have a showroom and this person may have something else. I have clients that say, "Well, how much should I what should this number be?" And I explain to them, "I can tell you kind of where it should be, but it's so dependent on your business because just because you're an interior designer, your version of interior design is very different than someone else's. Someone else maybe they're not doing a lot of FF&E. Maybe they're just focusing on just design fees, or maybe they're also doing staging, or they have a showroom. So their numbers are
Right.
look completely different than yours. So don't get hung up on what's average, but let's figure out what makes sense for your business. And if you're making enough money to fund your lifestyle and to fund your future goals, that's all that matters, right? So
Right.
it doesn't matter what the designer next door is doing.
Yes, yes. Stop looking. Somebody asked me the other day, it's like, how do you deal with everything that's going on with all the coaching groups and all the coaches? I'm like, what's going on? I keep my blinders on. I serve my clients and I focus on my group and my following.
Yes, exactly.
Nobody else's. I just
Uh,
keep my blinders on. And that really is good advice for every business owner.
Yeah, you're not in competition because
Right.
you're the only one of you. And
Exactly.
someone may not be the right fit for you, but that's that they may go to someone else, but they're not your competition. They just weren't for you. That's all, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So, all
So
right, everyone,
let's
go
kind of
grind
get
your
close.
numbers and let's wrap it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. So we're gonna just make sure you understand those numbers. If you don't have books, if you're using a spreadsheet, then you can't do anything that we're talking about. So if you're using a spreadsheet, we've got to get you off of there, put you into QuickBooks
Yes.
to kind of get things going. Um, make sure you part of being a business owner, even if you're not doing your own bookkeeping, is deepening your financial literacy. So just learning the stuff, even it's just so that you have an idea, you understand the lingo, the words that people are
Yes.
using. And then, of course, come talk to us if you need more help.
Yeah, and the best part is that you meet, if you're doing someone's books, besides the initial consultation they can have with you to ask some questions and have
Mhm.
you can give them an estimate on what it would take to look at their books, clean up their books, which I have to say you're always very reasonable, I feel. And it's really educating the business owner as well. Like when you cleaned up my books, I was like, oh, I was doing that for years. I didn't know that was supposed to do
Right.
that. Like, and I'm pretty good at this stuff, kind of like, I'd say better than some, but I still didn't know so much myself also.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
still don't.
it's not your job to know. Your job is to go out and coach people to make more money. That's what your job is to do.
Exactly. And then to
So,
send them to you to figure out where their money belongs in QuickBooks and how to get it to their accountant in the right
exactly. So
way.
basically just empower your interior design business with financial knowledge. I mean, that's at the end of the day. That's the goal.
Absolutely. All right, guys, if you're coming on late and you want to go back to the beginning, these are always sitting on my YouTube channel by my name, Nancy Ganzagoffer. And there are different playlists for different types of lives that I do. So Balanced Bookkeeping has their own playlist that you can actually binge watch all of Carleen's advice. So I
Yeah, and
suggest you
actually,
do
if
that.
they look me up on YouTube as well, I show up in that playlist. So that's another fast way to get to me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
so cool.
perfect.
All right.
Perfect, perfect. All right, everyone, we
Talking
will
to
see
you.
you next time. Thanks, Colleen.
Bye. Have a good
Bye,
one.
everyone.